Good morning and welcome, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Good evening. I'm Tomas Garza, and I want to welcome you to A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love, a daily live stream here on Enlightened World Network. Thank you all for tuning in from all over the world. Quite literally, it's a lot of fun for me to get up here on this platform and share my experience with you. And as always here on the live stream, it's a daily live stream. I would love to hear from you. So if you have questions, specific questions or comments about your own spiritual path, your walk, your spiritual practice, A Course in Miracles, the workbook, the lessons that we're talking about each day, anything related to that is what I am here to talk about. It's what I love to talk about, and I am more than happy to answer questions here on this live stream, which you may have seen. And I want to invite you, if you have questions and you're catching the replay, type them in as comments here on the Facebook Live, and I will get back to them as quickly as I can. I do check those several times a day. So thank you for tuning in. And as always, thank you for sharing. So, well, we've got a lot to talk about today. And when I look at a foundational lesson, like lesson 37 in the workbook, My Holiness Blesses the World, I think that this could either be a really short live stream, as in less than 1 minute, or it will take the entire half-hour time frame. So today it may take the half-hour time frame. Quite simply, this is the truth. My holiness blesses the world. Right? Yesterday, we were looking at our holiness enveloping everything that we see, both with our eyes open and with the mind, where real vision lies, with our eyes closed. So, well, what is exactly our holiness? Right? I mean, there are people that are referred to in the world as Your Holiness. High Lamas in Tibetan Buddhism are referred to as Your Holiness, like the Dalai Lama, popes, right? His Holiness. What is Your Holiness? Well, it's not an honorific that you have somehow earned by birth or by election by a body of human beings. It is who we really are. It is our birthright, if you want to think of it that way. And it blesses the world. In fact, this is what we are here in the world to do. The workbook lesson tells us that our function here is to see the world through our own holiness. So this is step number 1 in accepting our own holiness and acknowledging it. Now, this has never gone away. So, truth, not my truth or your truth or someone else's relative truth, right? One nation's relative truth, another nation's relative truth, none of that. Truth, just truth, is absolute. It's absolute. That's why in certain Eastern traditions, like Buddhism, you'll see the phrase absolute truth. And that's used as a term for who we really are. In other words, spirit, right? God, right? One with God, the Son of God. However you want to put that into words, it is the ground of all being, life itself, our existence. It's who we are when we get rid of all of the extraneous stuff. In other words, all of our conditioning, all of the ego's baggage that we carry around with us habitually, identifying with it. Yeah, it's no one's fault that we do this. We've learned from other people to do this, and they've learned from other people to do this, and so on and so on and so on. The workbook undoes this. It is brilliantly designed to do just that, to begin to strip away and peel away these layers of our conditioning so we get to what's there when all the conditioning is gone, which is where we've always been. It's who we've always been from beginningless time. It's just the nature of who we are and what is. Now, the workbook itself does not do the work. We each do the work ourselves, moment to moment, by choosing love. It's simple. It's not easy, of course. And why is it not easy? Well, it's not easy. It's not as easy as it sounds because of that conditioning, of that very conditioning of this voice in our heads or sitting on our shoulders, if we will, saying, oh, yeah, you can't do that. Yeah, wouldn't you rather do something else more constructive in the eyes of the world, like scroll your Facebook feed? Yeah, you don't need to practice this workbook. It's too hard. It's too hard. Yeah, you can't do that. That voice, the ego voice that wants to keep us small. Now, it's just conditioning, and it is not actually, the ego is not actually a separate being, so it's not an opponent. I know that it is tempting in the world's philosophy to create opponents where none exist. Well, this is a very wonderful ego device where it just keeps perpetuating a problem again and again. And A Course in Miracles says something about the ego and the ego's thought system that I think is really brilliant. And the ego's tenet, its fundamental belief, is seek, but don't find. Does that sound like part of life? Maybe in your experience, seek but don't find. Keep rolling around on a treadmill in a circle, getting actually nowhere. Yet there is and always has been a way out of that, a way to stop ourselves from spinning. And no one person or tradition will do that for us but ourselves. So it's up to us. If you're working in the workbook, it's up to you to open it up every day. The fact that you're watching this live stream is really good. It means you're on your way. Now, there's still day-to-day, moment-to-moment things to be done, but it's very good that you're here. So I thank you. And I know that everyone else that is connected to you thanks you as well for your love, quite frankly, for your diligence, for your love of yourself and everyone else. That's showing up as love. This is one way of doing that. There are many ways to do this. This is one. So our function is to see the world through our own holiness. And it's to extend love. Yeah, the Course talks about forgiveness, which we'll talk about in great detail on this live stream. And in fact, I will have longer length workshops about this coming up down the line here in the next weeks and months, because it's such a foundational principle of A Course in Miracles, and it's very misunderstood. But suffice it for right now, today, to know that that's one of our functions. It's to shine the light, right? It's to show up as love. And the workbook lesson for today talks about the notion of sacrifice that I want to spend a couple of minutes on. It's a very foundational concept to the ego. It's a foundational concept to the world that stops people in their tracks from wanting to give. It stops generosity and kills it dead. Why? Because people think that by giving something, that they'll be out something. In other words, if you want to give somebody $20, for example, then in the eyes of the world, you don't get anything as the giver. You're out $20. And that's what the ego would have us believe. You don't get anything, you lost. So no wonder when you accumulate one example after another for time immemorial, that we're often finding ourselves hesitant in a situation like that. The Course teaches us, and spirituality itself teaches us, that giving is actually gaining, and you may have had that experience multiple times in this lifetime. And I hope that you may have done that, right, and had that satisfaction, because really giving is sharing. What happens when you share? What happens when you extend love? You get love back. You recognize that you are love. You recognize by giving and sharing with another person, you recognize yourself, your own true nature. This is what A Course in Miracles talks about. And if all of this, if you're new to this thought system and all of this seems, well, a bit esoteric, a bit over, you might find it over your head, which actually it's not. At all. It's not at all. But if you're thinking about it that way, then I invite you to just show up and practice, read how the workbook suggests that you practice the day's idea, and do just that. Do just that without worrying about anything else. Because as we're told and reassured, frankly, repeatedly, that if we simply show up and practice these ideas, we will save ourselves countless time. In other words, you will make progress, but you must choose to show up and do what it asks of you to do. Now, this is, of course, a reason why many people start and stop the workbook. People definitely have said, oh, well, I can't really do that. This is not for me. Well, that's the reason why people do that, is because this is asking us to think differently, which you might be thinking doesn't seem like a big ask, but it is not always as easy as it sounds to undo eons and eons of habitual conditioning. It doesn't give way just because we want it to. And we actually do need to work on it, which is one of the reasons, incidentally, why community is so important, especially in the study of A Course in Miracles. This is why you see countless study groups and practice groups, and in other traditions, it's why you have people getting together and meditating, why you have prayer groups, right? Bible study groups, if you're in the Christian tradition. It's a community aspect because this journey is shared. It is shared, and it is not just some stoned reggae performer's pipe dream that we're all one and then there's one love, right? It's not just that, okay? It's truth. It's truth. And this is one way that we can practice changing our minds and orienting our minds toward truth. So sacrifice is something of the world. And if you take nothing else out of today's lesson, givers gain. You gain by sharing. You gain by extending love. Everyone has felt the satisfaction of giving a gift to someone that was truly given, with no, truly given meaning that there are no strings attached. There's no expectation that you're going to get anything of material value back, or no expectation that someone's going to do a favor for you, that it's a quid pro quo in any way. I mean, maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. But a gift being truly given is just being given, and that's it. Understand that that gift is always received. This is straight out of the text in A Course in Miracles. A gift is always If it's truly given, a gift is always received. It's not necessarily accepted, right, by the recipient. They must actually accept it. So if you give someone, say, a copy of A Course in Miracles, for example, the gift is received, right? You gave it to them. It also must be accepted by the recipient. They must actually be interested enough to open it up, or interested enough to find us on YouTube on Enlightened World Network and watch a video. There's free will, and volition on everyone's part. So we don't sacrifice when we give. And today's lesson, when practiced, helps us to reorient our minds to that fact. And, it's if you see yourself as whole, you don't make any demands. Okay, this is paraphrasing today's idea. When you see yourself as whole, complete, not broken, then there's no way you can make demands of anyone else. You just show up and extend love. And that's if you see yourself as whole. What happens in the world? Well, we don't see ourselves as whole. We see ourselves as incomplete, as fragmented, as cut off, and therefore we stress out. We suffer, basically. And if you see yourself as whole, then you don't need to demand anything of anyone. So we'll come back in subsequent lessons to the idea that sacrifice is totally unnecessary, that it's not something that we need to make. And of course, in the world, we see it completely differently, don't we? So this is a complete alternative to the way the world views things. And as always, it would be very kind of you to yourself and to everyone else to take this to heart. And if you're here, if you've gotten to this point, practice the lessons as best you can. Because even the smallest shift, even the tiniest millimeter fraction of a shift in the direction of love creates a ripple effect. It really does. And if you do it again and again and again, you'll find in your own experience and in the way you relate to the world, in other words, other people's experience as well, that little drop can become a tsunami. It can. Such is the power of love, our own true power. So it would be very kind of you to put all of this into practice. Now, since we have a few minutes here, I guess this wasn't a 30-second live stream, right? Because simple doesn't always mean easy. So let's check in, and I'd like to see who's joining me here today and whether anyone has any questions. So, all right, and well, Cindy, who's in the next room, my wife Cindy says, hello from Phoenix, my friends. Well, and I will also say, hello from Phoenix, my friends. Yes, Staten Island, New York. Deirdre, all right. Isabel, hi, how are you? And Hope, how are you? From London, yeah. All right, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Yes, and Deirdre, am I offering a workshop with the ACIM concept separate from this? Yes, I will be. I don't know exactly when yet, but there are several different components of A Course in Miracles that lend themselves to a longer spot and more in-depth study. So yes, I am working on that, and stay tuned. I'll announce all of those details on social media and here on this live stream. So yes, I will be doing that. When exactly? Well, I don't know, but a lot has come up. A lot of things have come up, as you might imagine, since I began this live stream about 6 weeks ago. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that. And Isabel from Florida. All right, well, thank you for tuning in. Everybody's from all over the world. And Robert from Romania. Yes, thank you for tuning in. Wonderful. So questions. Does anyone have any questions or comments about any of this? Because this should raise lots of questions. It always does for me. I remember when I first started the workbook, certain lessons, the ego just freaked out and panicked and told me, oh, I don't need to do that. Oh no. In translation, I feel threatened. I feel like you're going to cancel me and then you're going to walk away and you're not going to need me anymore. What will I do then? I don't really know. Not my problem, right? So this is always fun, and yeah. So anyway, if you have further questions or comments or anything that you'd like to share about your experience, definitely please let me know in the comments. Now, also, since I'm talking about things that are coming down the line, I've got a very special guest that I'm going to bring onto the live stream on Monday the 15th. Some of you may know Marbeth Dunn from Florida in the United States, but she has been working with and practicing and leading groups on A Course in Miracles for many, many years. I think it's over 20 or maybe 30 years. So she'll be joining me on Monday. I will be having Cindy come back onto the live stream. So I'm committing you live and publicly to this right now. We've talked about this. So I'm going to bring some guests on. And as I develop and come up with ACIM related workshops, I will certainly announce that here in advance and let everybody know. So some exciting things coming down. And I like to take pauses in the workbook. As you can see, I'm not just blitzing through in just 365 days, because I never did that at first. Sometimes I would actually resonate so deeply with a certain lesson that I would spend 3 or 4 days on it. And that's absolutely fine. Sometimes I felt like I needed to work further because there was still a lot of resistance. So I did the same thing for a slightly different reason. And